Okay, so what we talked about last time. By the way, thank you for all the mazel tovs. I appreciate it. What we talked about last time were the circumstances by which Jewish involvement in high culture, in philosophy, in sciences, was sort of forced on them, and they had to deal with it out of self-defense. At the same time, many Jewish intellectuals, and most of them were also rabbis, led by Rav Saadia Gaon, came to the idea that, the more you know, the more sophisticated your understanding of your own religion is, the better you are. You can deal with questions. You can better deal with doubt. It's empowering. If you're challenged, as I said, you can respond, which raises a very, very big issue, which I don't, I'll tell you in a minute what my take is on it. The question of this: what is superior, demonstrated faith or undemonstrated faith? In other words, is it better to have pristine, just not blind faith, because that's a judgment already, pure faith? I just believe in God. I don't need to know anything more than that. Or is it better to really be much more sophisticated and to base your your relationship with God on understanding as much as you can? And there are arguments each way. There are really good arguments either way. Those who argue for a more innocent faith will say that an innocent faith will carry you over, whereas if you're overly sophisticated, you can talk yourself into or out of anything. On the other hand, they'll say a person of pristine faith will not be able to deal with challenges, and if he ever develops doubts, he'll go right down the tubes. Whereas if you know how to deal with something, understand that there are things you don't understand, and that there are ways to deal with this. Interestingly, one of the more assuming that this is the pshat, but about a year ago, I read this really interesting book, which I can't remember now. I can't remember the name of the book, by my really dear friend and much bemoaned friend, Professor Shalom Rosenberg of Hebrew University, who was really one of the great minds of the not sufficiently appreciated minds of the 20th century, religious mind. He wrote a book about Rabbi Nachman, which I don't remember the name of the book, but he did have one point which is related to what we're saying. Rabbi Nachman was very, very, very aware of the fact that the Enlightenment and Western culture in the 19th century, that which was coming and making inroads in Jewish society, especially in Eastern Europe, that society was based heavily on science and reason and enlightenment, and reason was the and science, scientific, being scientific. Being scientific. I don't think there's a word as scientific. Anyway, no, look, you get the point. Is the litmus test for what's acceptable and what's not. And on the other hand, he realized that most of his followers, most of the Jews in Eastern Europe, were very much simple believers, and they wouldn't be able to stand up before that. And the question of how one can live with doubt is a really, really serious and not easily parsed question in general. Even the question of whether religious doubt is a legitimate religious category is a question. If a person has doubts, does that make you, not religious anymore? Or, is there a problem? Rabbi Lamb from L'Racha has a book called Faith and Doubt, in which he argues that suspended judgment or having questions is a legitimate and credible religious category. It doesn't make you a bad Jew if you wonder about stuff. If you don't just say, if you're not extremely dogmatic and say, boom, I believe and that's it. That having another or being open to question is certainly perfectly legitimate from a Jewish point of view, and he has a long He has a long essay in the book called Faith and Doubt, which he lays that out. In any event, but not everybody maintains that way. The more fundamentalist the Jewish community, or Orthodox Jewish community, the less tolerant of questioning and questions they tend to be. The answer to the question is, from the point of view of anecdotally, slap in the face, who told you to ask. Rabbi Nachman, being aware of the fact that that the people were not his people in Ukraine and Poland and so on, where in fact the Enlightenment was making inroads, he says these people weren't ready for this. So he says that is why his position was, he was a very sophisticated thinker, but that was his position was that you should just maintain your faith and don't ask questions. Hold on as much as you can. Be as restrained as possible intellectually and as free spiritually as possible. And that is where the state. Okay, why am I drinking a cup with this? Because that's where the statement, according to Rosenberg, that's where the statement "Kol haolam kulo gesher tsar meod v'ha'ikar lo lefached klal" comes from. In other words, the way of faith is very, very narrow. It's a very narrow bridge. You can fall into the abyss of doubt and heresy is a bad word. And disbelief very easily. But if you stay on the straight and narrow, you'll be fine. That's where that comes from.
Could one not equally call the very narrow bridge very narrow-minded?
You could see it that way, and the question then becomes: is being narrow-minded always bad? I mean, I'm not giving answers here, but is being narrow-minded? Is it always bad? Okay, because you can also, I can retort with the obviously cynical comment that a lot of people make, which is so and so is so open-minded his brains fell out. Because the question is, how do you? I mean, you have to know what you can deal as well. There are certain assumptions about our lives that we don't question. Or at least to a certain point, we don't question. Love for parents, especially when you're a little kid, you don't think about it. You give absolute devotion to your parents, or devotion, you deference to your parents. And then, of course, you get the famous about again, it's another one of these memes that show up. I don't know why I get them, or maybe because I'm older and because I have kids. The one about, when the kid is 5, the father knows everything. When the kid is 12, he begins to ask questions. When he's 18, he knows nothing. And all of a sudden, by the time he gets to be 30, he seems to see his father knows stuff. And by the time the kid's going to be 40, I wish my father were here, I would ask him. So, that's also part of this calculus. In any event, the point is that so the flip side of what people don't know about this Rabbi Nachman, according to Professor Rosenberg, is that according to Rabbi Nachman, he thought that it was the function of the Rebbe to acquire the tools to critically engage the outside world on behalf, in anticipation of the needs of his people. Now, that's the part they don't talk about. But that apparently was what he was. He's based on stories. Like I said, I don't remember the name of the book at the moment.
Was he also personally disgusted by philosophy, though?
Yeah, no question.
So how did you engage if you were disgusted by philosophy? What was his means?
You can be. Well, you don't. You learn things that you need to know, even if you don't like them. I mean, that's.
He wasn't a fan of it, but he viewed it as an necessity.
But he realized the threat that it posed, especially since it was a godless philosophy, and that, by the way, is a very big difference between 19th century and 20th century philosophy, and 21st and beginning of 20th. We're deep enough into the 21st century. We can talk about that too. And medieval philosophy. Medieval philosophy was a philosophy of belief. In other words, the point, we're going to see that in a sec, the point of departure is belief in God. The question is it better to have a belief which is demonstrated and buttressed and fortified by reason and by science, which people want, come on, everybody, the media was swamped the past week about sightings of all kinds of archaeological evidence for or against Kriyas Yamsuf, for example. I mean, we like this kind of stuff. Is it necessary? That's an interesting question.
No one wants to call their own faith blind.
Correct, or they want, or pristine. I mean, pristine's a nicer word, but you're right. But that's the point. So the point is, anyways, in any event, and that's a fundamental difference. But that's all the more reason why Rabbi Nachman felt that this was something he had to, that battening down the hatches is the only way to deal with things. By the way, it anticipates the Haredi position that we just have to just shut the world out. And in the 19th century, in Eastern Europe, you could do that. You can't do it today, but we'll get to that. All right. In any event, the point is that number one, that a lot of people who encountered the Kalam and later encountered what medieval philosophy became, said, gee, the stuff here we can use to further and to use, we can enlist it in order to deepen our appreciation and our faith and our understanding of the Torah. I mean, that's not a bad, and that by definition shouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, sometimes I wonder, the extremes are never good, I guess. For example, if you read poskim, if you read tshuvas, if you read Rishonim take the time to tell you exactly what what the animals and the flowers and all the realia there in the Talmud, so we can understand the Gemara and then apply halacha the way it's supposed to, right? If you don't know which flower you say, or which plant or which vegetable you say what on, or which bracha you say on what vegetable, then where are you going to be? Okay, there's a reason I'm telling you this. Now, in the world of the yeshivas, everything gets conceptualized, which is great. It's wonderful. I'm addicted to it as well. How to see what the categories and the ideas and the various concepts that underlie halacha and how and make it move. It's an intoxicatingly, incredibly interesting and enlightening and religiously inspiring world. But at the end of the day, you also have to know how to keep mitzvahs. I mean, right? I just read a story. Where did I see this? I don't remember now. Oh, I know. A friend of mine who's a president of a law school, but he's an incredibly, he's a big Talmud Chacham, and he's an incredibly gifted writer. Professor Aviada Cohen wrote an article about the relationship between Professor Saul Lieberman of the seminary and the world of the yeshivas. Now, he came from that world, and he lived sort of on the margins because, on the one hand, he was the head of a conservative seminary. Personally, he was very, very frum, and he was a big Talmud Chacham, and he never really turned his back on the yeshiva world. And he was Rav Soloveitchik's cousin by marriage. He was married to the daughter of Mayor Berlin, who later became Mayor Bar Ilan, after whom the university is named, who was the son of the Netziv, and the Rav was the great-grandson of the Netziv. All right, anyway. So they once asked Rav Soloveitchik the difference between him and Professor Lieberman. And he said the difference is that Professor Lieberman can tell you absolutely for example, if you want to know, there's a din of Radias Apas. It pops up in at least 4 places in Shas. How do you properly, and what are the implications of getting a loaf of bread out of the oven? What are we talking about? You ever seen a ta'abon? You ever go to like a falafel place or a hummus place, and they got this big brick oven? Okay, so you see there how people. I mean, if you go to the ones in the there's one actually. If it's I haven't been to Egged in so long. I don't know if it's still there, but there was one in one of the bakeries on the second floor of the near the food court at the very end, where they have but there they use a blowtorch. Trust me, they didn't use blowtorches at the time of Chazal, but more or less Arabs make bread the same way. The women. They take the pitot and they warm up the oven so it's really, really hot, and the bakers take the round pitot and they stick it on the walls of the oven, and when the pita is baked, it falls off, and that's how you make a pita. And they've been making pita like that for like forever. If you use a spatula. By the way, how do you say? Right now, say spatula in Hebrew. It's one of those words that are very, very important, but nobody knows. It's a marit, not a spatula. It's a marit. You can get away with it. You can get away with that a lot of the time, but you can't always get away with it, right? Just say it. It's a marit. Anyways, so Ridias Hapas or Ridiyat Hapat tells you if you have a long stick and you want to get the bread out of the oven, how do you get it out? So the Gemara in Shabbos, I think it's in Rosh Hashanah also, says that Ridiyas Hapas is a chachma ve'ein a malacha. It's a skill, but it does. If you do it on Shabbos, we do it on Shabbos. If you do it, say on Yom Tov or whatever, it's not a malacha. So Rabbi Soloveitchik said, if you want to know exactly what did the oven look like, and what did the spatula look like, and how did they do this and that, you go to Professor Lieberman. If you want to know the exact, precise definition of what's a malacha, you ask me. All right. So, all right. There's a reason why I'm giving you this whole spiel, because in the run to conceptualization and high lumdus, sometimes people forget that, in fact, what Professor Lieberman used to provide with all the realia, or Professor Rabbi Steinsaltz does in his edition of the Gemara, is actually also valuable. Many years ago, and I do recommend this while you're here. Well, it's still here. There's a park outside of. It's not far from Ein Karen, called Sataf. And it's a nice park, and it's actually, I think it's public land officially, and it is organized in such a way that every citizen of Jerusalem is allowed to get it like a little plot of land to cultivate. And when you go there, what you find is that somebody, I don't remember who, somebody has organized a bunch of the plots such that the land is cultivated in accordance with those methods of cultivation which are mentioned in the Mishnah and the Gemara. If you want to see where this is discussed at length, you see it in the first chapter in Moed Katan, where the Gemara talks about which types of agricultural things can you do during Chol HaMoed, and how much water can you give, and so on and so forth. But there are explicit, there are really detailed descriptions of how these things look, and how do you embank a tree to put water in. It's all the first like 10 blot of the Gemara in Moed Katan. Most people don't know Moed Katan; they know the last parak because it's about Avelis, but the first two no. But it's all there. I went there the first time with my my daughter who got married this week. So this is a long time ago. It's about 23 years ago. So we were there, and all right. So she was playing with her. With a little friend, and my wife was talking with her with her friend, who was the mother of the little friend, and I was there alone. So I'm wandering around, and I see. I take in the fact that this is. I couldn't believe it. Like, this is like, wow. This is wow. This is a stay lovan, and this is Beis HaSholchan, and this is how they would irrigate, would water the tree. And I see there's a guy in the corner learning. I said, somebody with whom I can share my excitement. So I went running over to him, and I said, do you see what's here? He looks up and says, no, what's here? I said, look, did you ever learn Moed Katan? Of course, learn Moed Katan. I said, look at over here, this is this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Huh? He didn't understand why I was excited. This is like the Gemara come alive. And he just went back to his Gemara. And I'm going, there's something wrong here. This is really something wrong here. Because it's like you're walking into a time machine. Okay? This is a problem. Because what happens is we get so conceptualized that, the things we should know as part of Torah education, including a certain amount of agriculture, apparently, we miss. I mean, sometimes it gets to be really crazy. I was in Chicago once for meetings, and I got there an hour early, which was very unusual for me. But all right. I was at the University of Chicago, and then somebody said, "Why don't you go to the Institute for the Archaeological Institute for Middle Eastern Studies?" They did a lot of the major archaeological digs in the Near East and in Egypt in the early part of the 20th century. So I'm walking around. And there was a group in front of me, and they were all basically circled around the. Around the mummies. So, all right, so I can't get close to the mummies. So this is before phones, and you could take pictures of the mummies like this and whatever. So I wandered around, and at the edges of the showroom it was a display case with 3 bricks. One brick had the cartouche. You know what a cartouche is? Everyone know what a cartouche is? Cartouche is the seal in hieroglyphs of the Egyptian, like signets. So one had this cartouche of Ramses the First. One had the cartouche of Seti the First, and one had the cartouche of Ramses the Second. In other words, according to traditional dating, all 3 pharaohs of the Shiabud Mitzrayim, and Ramses the Third. Ramses the Second, of course, was the pharaoh of the Exodus. But that wasn't all. If you look carefully at the bricks, you could see the straw. You could see straw in between the mud, and I just stood there, transfixed by these 3 bricks. Thinking, which ancestor, made these bricks? And, the kashi, give the kashi, don't give the kashi, whatever. That was on like a Wednesday or Thursday. I flew back to New York. I was the rabbi of a small minyan in Riverdale, New York. And Shabbos morning, I told them this story. And again, all of these yeshiva, uber sophisticated, now they're lawyers and doctors, but uber sophisticated yeshiva guys, and they don't understand for a minute why I was so excited. So there are things that people should know. Okay, so it became an issue. And that enhances your knowledge of Torah. In any case, the awareness that, or this conviction that we can use this stuff to reinforce and to deepen our appreciation of Torah, even though it does not ostensibly originate within, became a conviction of, or it seems like it doesn't appear, it doesn't begin, it doesn't start within, becomes a conviction of the elite of the Jews living in the Arab world, not of Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim have been allergic to this stuff for me'az u'me'olam, but we'll come to that another time. Now look at number 6. Okay. However, by virtue of its own logic, okay, it became the formative belief that yes, we are learning philosophy and science from the Greeks or from non-Jews, but that's not because I'm bringing something foreign into the Torah. I'm not allowed to bring something foreign into the Torah. The Torah is self-sufficient. God's word is self-sufficient. So what am I doing reading Aristotle's On Ethics, or Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, which is the basis of the Rambam Shita in Ethics, or whatever? Why do I do that? So the Rambam addresses it in the 71st chapter, the first part of the Moreh Nevuchim. Okay, when the Rambam says da, or he doesn't say it, I don't remember how you say it in Arabic. Da means he's taking a red flag, pay attention. Da. כי החוכמות הרבות אשר היו באומתנו באמיתת אלו העניינים. By those forms of wisdom which were always part of our nation and our culture and our Torah, Abdu Barach Hazman, they got lost over time. Ubishlot ha'umot haschalot aleinu, and because we suffered under, basically the Rambam thinks that bad economic and political circumstances lead to cultural decline. Ubiot, okay, so first of all, they got lost. But what's the point? What's the point? I'm only retrieving something which is authentically Jewish. Why? Because Greek philosophy was based on logic and math, and they tell truth, and truth must come from God. There's no other source of truth than God. So it must be, as I told you, that there are two lines to truth, both of which coalesce in God. If we didn't have we have the Torah, thank God, which is a direct communication of conclusions. But the other path is also there. And hence, I am simply fulfilling a restorative function. Things get lost. I'm restoring it. Okay. So that's legitimate. If it was all a pagan something or other, I can't. But understand at the same time that Greek philosophy based on logic and math assumed, and this was assumed by everybody, to provide demonstrated truth, which means that there is such a thing as truth. Okay, just a second. I mentioned before in an earlier class that that's why our encounter with contemporary philosophy and culture is not the same as that which we as what the Rambam and all the medievals were doing, for a very simple reason. Everything we have in the outside world is based on doubt, is based on skepticism. It's one of the reasons why in principle, yes, I don't want to become a Luddite over here, but that's why the argument that the scientists say and we know is ridiculous. By definition, a scientist, social science, hard science, and now they say even mathematics, cannot say we know. All they can say is based on all the information we have at the moment, and to the degree that we can, it's in hard science, that we are aware of every single variable that affects whatever conclusion we're talking about, or whatever experiment or test or probe led to the conclusion at present dominant. That's what we think. One of the great what's the word I'm looking for? Not narcissism. Just a sec. Give me a sec to think. It's more than hubris. One of the great conceits of contemporary discourse is that I can know. Can't know. So the Torah says X, Y, and Z. And they say, well, there's no proof of that. But that's not a proof. It's interesting. It's one of the reasons why. I think it's one of the reasons why. So a very nice book about Jewish belief and philosophy by a professor at Haifa named Sam Lebens, which I strongly recommend. The best you can do is reasonability. So that's why you can't automatically translate the Rambam to this and say, okay, everything in the outside world can also be part of Torah and be restorative, because some stuff just doesn't jibe. Okay. In any case, so the Rambam is saying, but the Rambam here is saying that as far as we believe that this leads to truth. So and there's only one source of truth is Rebbeinu Shalom. So therefore, it must be that the two coincide, and that's why what most religious philosophers, Muslim, Jewish, and Christian, did was to try to show where the two overlap. And they believed that once you can prove things or make them reasonable, that makes for a better form of religiosity. Yeah.
So is that why we don't interact with Eastern philosophy as much as we might interact with it, or is that just due to the lack of association with it?
We do increasingly. There are people that are interacting with Eastern philosophies. Ostensibly, you should be right that Eastern philosophy should certainly have nothing. There should be no common language there. There were a few things about Eastern philosophies which I think, and again, this is not my strong. This is out of a little bit out of my pay. My pay grade. Number one, with the exception of Iraqi Jewish businessmen who went to live in India and the Far East and made tons and tons of money. Oh, your family is part of that?
Yeah, Iraqi, then most recently.
Yeah, okay, but say the Syrians less than the Iraqis. The Iraqis have it.
The Sunni and Kaduri families famously were the two big.
Lord Kaduri, that's true. No, they're not. What, Kaduri is not Iraqi.
Yeah, Kaduri, no, both Iraqi.
Right. I mean, Lord Kaduri, who owns every electric bulb in Hong Kong or whatever. Right. So, and they're the ones who were in in the eastern coast of India and whatever. With those exceptions, how much interaction? We have not had much interaction. It's interesting since the rise of Christianity and Islam with paganism, with idolatry. And as a result, in the 20th century, when business ties led religious Jews to have more and more involvement and exposure to Eastern religions, a lot of Avodah Zarah they didn't understand. Like it wasn't. They had to be pulled back off the shelf because nobody seemed to know what's what. Now, as it happens, there is, even among scholars, Orthodox Jewish scholars, but on the academic side, a serious point, difference of opinion as to whether Hinduism, for example, is Avodah Zarah. So Professor Danny Sperber from here argues that it isn't, and Professor what's his name, Alan Brill from the States says it is, and whatever. I think that I'm not sure to what degree. My natural tendency is to go with Brill because what he describes it makes more sense. For what Professor Sperber says is well documented, but it's not. Doesn't get down to the nitty gritty and the Avodah Zarahs and all this other stuff.
The Far Eastern countries, we have nothing to do with it at all, like China, Japan.
Well, China doesn't have any religion. I mean, China. I mean, I don't know anything about Taoism except for the fact they have no concept of God the way we understand it. And when my son actually worked for an Israeli company that had business dealings with Chinese, and there's no there. The other stuff, I mean, I took a course in college. I mean, Jain and Shinto and that's already Japan. Jain and Shinto and Buddhism and so on and so forth. It's problematic. It's problematic. It certainly hasn't been played out. But the point is that you can't, in terms of the Jewish interaction has been with Western and Muslim culture. Period. In any event, so the Rambam is saying if your assumption is that they all go to the same place, then you can say Lachzira Tara Lioshna, to return to a restorative kind of broader sense of Torah. Now that has a lot of ramifications, some of which actually may very well actually hold even today, even though modern and postmodern philosophy and culture are far less compatible with Judaism. Take a look, for example, number 7. This is the first Rambam in the Mishnah Torah. Yesod ha-yesodot ve'amud ha-chochmot leida sheyesha matzui rishon v'hu mamtzi kol nimtza v'chol ha-nimtzaim mishamayim va'aretz u'ma shebenehem lo nimtzeu ela me'amitat himatzau. It is the foundation of the foundations and the pillar of wisdoms to know that there is a first being. That's very Aristotelian. Okay. Now, let's just concentrate on those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words. Number 1. This traditionally is considered to be the Rambam paskening forever that there is a mitzvah to believe in God. It's a mitzvah to believe in God. Okay? What?
In what?
No, there's one of the six, it's a technical thing. One of the 613 mitzvot is to believe in God.
Well, I mean, to use the, isn't the word that we use there, whether we use belief or knowledge?
Oh, that's step 2. Okay. Who is that God? Okay. The Rambam hints at who that God is. In the first 4 words of the Mishnah Torah, one begins with a yud and a hey, and then a vav, and then a hey. So if you didn't figure it out on your own, I'm telling you. By the way, just a piece of something to amaze your friends or to amaze people at a Friday night dinner or at a kiddush. The Rambam is the first person to start his book with 4 words that spell out the Tetragrammaton, the Shema Meforash. Everybody else who comes after that is copying the Rambam. You have then all kinds of variations. Yishtabach haborei v'yitpaer. I mean, whatever. It starts here. But as you said before, the question is, what is the word leida? Okay. Now, if you look in the Rambam in the, I might have made a mistake here and not. Oh, yeah, I did. Look at the next page, number 8. In Sefer HaMitzvot, okay, in the Hebrew translation, the Rambam says, "Ha-mitzvah harishona hi atzivui asher tzivanu leha'amin ha'elokut," to believe in God. Oh, good. V'hu shenamin sheyesh ham ilah, that there's original cause of everything. Okay, so that the rest of it comes out nicely with the Rambam. Mamtzi kol nimtza is the same as ilah ta'ilot. Okay. Here he says, believe. Okay? Here he says, leida. Properly said, what's the Arabic? Because the Rambam wrote the Sefer Mitzvahs in Arabic. So there are a bunch of different translations of the Sefer Mitzvot. The one that we use is the one that was translated by a member of a very prominent Provençal, originally Spanish Jewish family in the late 12th, early 13th century, the Ibn Tibon family, yeah, right there. But Moshe Ibn Tibon, but he was his older brother Shmuel, who produced the authorized translation of the Moreh Nevuchim, and his father Yehuda Ibn Tibon, who translated everything under the sun, the Chovot HaLevavot and the Kuzari and so on and so forth. So he was really the least talented of all of them. So Moshe Ibn Tibon, he left us with he translated whatever the word was as La'amin. The word in Arabic is not 100% clear. You could make the case that it means to know. You could make the case that it means to believe. Now, what's the difference? To believe, and this is actually coming to, I might be able to pull this off. Look at that. The difference is this. I can believe something, and it can be in my kishkes, right? It's in my bones. I know it's true, but I can't prove it to anybody. Something that you believe is not demonstrable. It's often not expressible. Okay? It's like, I think I mentioned this before. It's like love. You can't convince absolutely somebody else that you love them. You can express love, you can strongly imply, you can do all kinds of things. But you can't take your beliefs and stick them in somebody else's head and then say, oh, I believe that's it, on my terms. Okay? It's like that. Okay? That doesn't mean you don't know it. There are things that we know, like love. There are things that we know that just can't be proven. They're beyond proof. Starting with Kant, based on Kant, there was and it's a worthwhile book, even though it's 100 years old. It's hard to believe it's 100 years old, because my parents would have been 100 years old, so it's not that crazy. There's a book called On Holiness by a man named Rudolf Otto, which he's a Christian, so you have to realize it's a Christian-tinged book. But he basically said there are two types of things in the world, and you can know them in two different ways. There are the things that are phenomenal. They are a phenomenon, and they can be measured, and they can be quantified, and they can be proven, and they can be touched, and all this other stuff. All right, that's one thing. Then there are the noumenal. There are things that you experience, that you know you experience, that you know are there, that you absolutely, positively know, but you absolutely cannot communicate them, and you cannot make somebody else see it. In other words, I can take the measurements of this desk, and I can take the measurements and tell you what it's made of and everything else, and you can reconstruct it, and you can have the exact same desk and prove it, and you'll see it. You'll have a desk exactly like this one. I can't do that with love. I can't do that with belief. I can't do that with holiness. If you've ever been in a place which is really holy, you know you experienced it. You can't communicate. Okay, that's belief. And this will reinforce stuff that we talked about before about, in terms of demonstrated and undemonstrated faith. Now, okay, I just want to get to that. To know something in Aristotelian terms is to be able to prove it mathematically, to be able to prove it philosophically or logically.
That's the same thing as ours, no?
What?
Isn't it that the same thing?
No, because if I want to, no, I can't prove to you that I believe. Okay? However, if I can prove in mathematical and logical terms, or philosophical terms, that there's a God that I believe in, He exists, therefore, and you accept the terms of logic and math, I can do that. Okay, that's the difference. It's communicative and stronger as a result. The difference also is belief is a state of being. Knowledge is an activity. It's an activity. I got to do something. So now there's a machlokas. So it's a very big difference if the mitzvah is to believe or not. How can you have a belief to be in a state of mind? How can you have a command to be in a state of mind? There's no such thing. I can command you to learn Jewish philosophy sufficiently to be. Or there are very nice TikTok things right now about Jewish philosophy. I know where they came from, but whatever. It says Jewish philosophy. I don't know who's behind it. In any event, and I spend far too much time on TikTok. In any event, that's an activity. And a mitzvah is a commandment to do something. It's the same problem with the mitzvah to love and the mitzvah. For example, the mitzvah to love God. Well, what is that? So a lot of monad mitzvahs say you got to be appreciative and you got to show your appreciation because you got to do something. State of mind is not a mitzvah. It's one of the, if you take a look at the, if you want to take a look at it's this week's parsha, look at the Ibn Ezra on Lo Tachmod. He can't. He suffers trying to figure out how can I control my head? Right? Emotions are not the most, given to control. In any event, so if philosophy is part of the Torah, Then, according to the Rambam, and let's assume for a moment that the reason why the Sefer Mitzvot says Lahamin, it's not the Rambam, it's because Moshe ben Tibon wasn't too talented. Okay, let's assume that that's his position. Does that make sense? But that also means, it's not just you should use philosophy to strengthen your faith. There's another implication, and that's the implication we'll talk about next week. And I'm going to, and at that point, I'm going to really draw a long line because we have to talk about contemporary stuff too. It means what?
This is not what Rambam speaks about in the first paragraph.
Yeah. Okay. At that point, it also means that there's a kiyum of Talmud Torah, and you take your courses in Jewish philosophy. It means that philosophy is an integral part of Torah in the sense of Talmud Torah as well. And the Rambam says it explicitly. The Rambam says in the introduction to the Moravuchim, he says, let me see did I bring it here? I don't know if I hold on. No. The Rambam says that this book is not for everybody. Especially for people, certainly not for people who are only interested in the Torah, in Chokhmat Torah, in the narrow sense, which then he defines explicitly as learning Gemara. But rather, it's a good thing you're all sitting. But rather, this book deals with Chokhmat Torah al Ha'emet, the true wisdom of the Torah. He couldn't say it any more baldly. Okay. So that's very interesting. That brings us back to a discussion we had earlier. Is learning secular studies Bittul Torah or not? And to what degree is it, and when is it? According to the Rambam, no.
Yeah.
According to the Rambam, no. Taking a sociology class about whether what the responses to the marriage of who's the tall singer? What's her name? No. She's like 6 foot tall. What's her name? She's marrying a football player. What's her name? What? I'm sorry? Taylor Swift. What's the is it? Yeah, she's like 6 foot tall or something. Okay, so taking a sociology class in terms of wondering what the implications are of people organizing their lives around the marriage of Taylor Swift and whatever the guy's name is. You could argue no. you could argue no. But there are courses like that. All right. So, and that opens up a discussion of popular culture, which we will get to very soon. In any event, so this engagement in the kalam and the challenges and the response and how do you what model do you create as a result then leads to the question of is it a legitimate part of Torah? Was it lost? Am I restoring it? No. Am I adding something? Is it dangerous? Is it not dangerous? Pure faith versus demonstrated sophisticated faith. What's the mitzvah of belief? Is there a mitzvah of belief? The Ramban says, and you can take a look at this on your own. The Ramban says no. Or the Ramban actually thinks it's a mitzvah to believe, but it's a different type of mitzvah. He quotes the Bahag, and he says no. There is no mitzvah to believe, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't learn, you shouldn't believe in God. He means you can't get off the ground without a mitzvah. He tells a story. He compares it to a king who conquers the city, and as soon as the king conquers the city and he sits down on the throne, so his assistants tell him, "Okay, now you got to legislate this and legislate that and legislate the other thing." And the king says, "No, you got it backwards. First, they have to accept me as their king, and then I can legislate." So it says the Ramban, the same thing over here. You can't command belief. You can accept belief. You can believe. And without belief, nothing works after that. But it's a conditio sine qua non. It's a condition that comes before everything else. Everything else is predicated on belief. But you can't command it. Al pi halacha, by the way, al pi halacha, you have something like that. There's I don't know if I mentioned this. There's a really weird, it's ironic, I guess, halacha. The din is that if It's in the sugi of Oved Avodah Zarah Mi'ava Mir. A guy comes up to you and he says, okay, he puts a gun to your head and he says, worship Krishna, I don't know, worship Jesus, whatever it is, okay? And if not, I'm going to shoot you. So the din is, in that situation, that you should say, shoot me. Shoot me. It's one of the three serious Averas, right? Avodah Zarah, Shvichut Damim, and Gilui Arayot. Tosfos, on the spot, Ayin Aleph, Ayin Beis, and something like that, says, what happens if he doesn't? He says, he gives in. He says, yeah, okay, fine. He says, he says, I don't really believe it. This is stupid. I could get out of here. I could just run away. You know, so I said, but he was obligated to be Moser Nefesh. That's what the Torah says. But if he did, but he couldn't do it. All right, fine. If he were arrested by the Sanhedrin the next day, oh, no. That's exactly the point. That's what you would have thought. The answer is no. Why? It was under compulsion. Nobody takes it seriously. If a guy puts a gun to your head, okay, and says, do this or say this, do you believe in Jesus? If you say yes, okay, you don't really believe in Jesus. You know what you believe in? You believe in the I got to tell you that, so I'm packing today. You believe in the 9mm bullet in the chamber. That's what you believe in, right? You believe in the fact that, just believe me, it doesn't take much to move. If you have a good gun, it doesn't take much to pull on the trigger. That's what you believe in. You don't believe. The whole essence of Avodah Zarah is to accept another God as God. But if you did it because you're worshiping, you're worried about the bullet, not about the guy on the cross on the wall, then it doesn't matter. So you're exempt. Will they give you Mafter Yonah? Will you get Ptichat Ne'ilah? Are they going to make a president of the shul? President of the shul, maybe they will make you. But they won't give you Mafter Yonah, and they won't give you Psichas Ne'ilah, and they won't give you Alta Haresa. But you're not going to kill you either because you didn't do the thing. Because you didn't. Why? Because you can't coerce belief. So that's why the Ramban says, you can't command belief. You can cultivate belief. So the Ramban will say something else, that no, if you cultivate it properly and you understand, and so forth. Take a look. All of the discussion. I'll give you homework for the first time all year. Take a look, everybody. I just on the daf. Look at Rashi, the Ramban, Ibn Ezra. Don't look at the Ramban. Ramban, Rashi, and Ibn Ezra on the pasuk of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Okay? There'll be a quiz. Okay? And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, how exactly this is played. But the bottom line is that even, so if that's the case, if the Rambam really means Leida, he also assumes that you start with belief and you fortify it by making your belief more sophisticated.
It's interesting you say that, because last week on the Shalach, the Sfat Emet basically said that himself.
Okay,
basically, there's two kinds of faith. A person who knows nothing at all and despite that still believes in God, and then the faith then brings him to be able to attain the understanding as well. After that, one must believe through the very attainment of the knowledge itself, knowing that it is possibly, knowing that it is impossible to truly attain him at all.
Absolutely. Perfect. Exactly. So, all right, so there's an interesting arc. You're going from, by the way, my teacher of mine once pointed out, the name of the book, I think I mentioned this, the name of the book that Rav Saadia Gaon wrote was, what's it called? Sefer HaEmunot V'Hadayot. Okay? But that's a mistranslation into Hebrew. Another one. I'm not going to do... What?
It's Itikav.
Right, Itikat, right. So, but that's at the end, right? So he says, something like that. So he says that the Arabic really means the book that will bring you from belief to knowledge. All right. So he is an arc, because the Sfas Emes lived 100 years ago. An arc that goes from the 10th century in Baghdad all the way to Eastern Europe. And it's interesting in that regard that the Rav, in his philosophy, in one place, I remember he said, I think he says in Loy Man Effects, but I'm not sure, that if you look at it, it's all about God is a given, and man is a given, and their relationship. And he says in one place, he says, I have no patience for proving the work, proving creation, proving this, proving that. My relationship with God is
So the beginning of
a given.
faith.
Okay, is a given. So this is an ongoing thing. So when people sit there and tell you, oh, scientifically we can't prove God, so good. Oh, so that proves nothing. Absolutely proves nothing. Not to mention the fact that there's a sort of superficiality in the idea that, in the fact that people mix up the how and the why. But that's for another time. Okay, Beseda.
Thank you very much, Professor.
My pleasure.
Are we very interested in what